Okay, and next up we have the wonderful, the incomparable Mr. John D. Scotcher. Welcome, John. John's going to tell you a little bit about the Literature Fest that's going on downstairs, and then he's going to give you a reading from his book, The Boy in Winter's Grasp. So I hope you're all ready for this. Hold on to your seats. It's an excellent book.
Hello. Thanks, Dan. So yes, if you haven't been downstairs yet, you should all come down there. There are a load of new writers down there at the Lit Fest, and we've got lots of talks all afternoon. So it's definitely worth coming down to. It's just downstairs. There's signs down there. Head on down and see everybody. Get out of this big room for a while. It's much quieter down there. You'll like it. Okay, this is from my novel, The Boy in Winter's Grasp, which is on sale just over there. If you're one of the few people that haven't bought it, go and buy a copy. And this is from somewhere in the middle of the book, when the lead baddie, the Master, first arrives in a new world. The Master stepped forward and sucked air into his lungs. Every part of him felt more alive than he had in weeks. Around him, the night air seemed to blow in from every direction, rushing to greet him like a loyal dog. He glanced around. Huge pine trees surrounded him on three sides, bending towards him in the wind as though they were bowing. Their high branches reached down towards him. In his hand, the key crackled and strained to be free of his grasp, but he held on tightly. It was always the same when the key first brought him through to a new world. Sometimes he could almost swear it was alive. What was that pull of power that it always displayed, if not excitement? He braced himself against the rush of the wind and waited for the object to die down. It only took a few seconds. As its light dimmed, the pull it exerted on his hand diminished too. The wind dropped as if in response. A moment later, the trees returned to standing straight as they should, pointing up into the cloudy night sky. The ground sloped down into a valley. Nestled at the bottom, he could see a small cluster of basic hovels. The glow of fires within, some escaped through poultry holes that served as windows. Wattle and daub walls held up thatched roofs. In some, single-jutted cylinders of clay formed chimneys for the fires below. The Master smiled to himself. Simple peasants were little use to him, but tonight they would suit his needs perfectly. Pocketing the now silent key in his long coat, he strode down, forwards towards the houses. He could hear laughter as he neared. There were 4 dwellings immediately in front of him, plus at least another beyond them. He strode to the nearest and pushed open the door. The laughter had come from a little girl. She sat with dirty, tousled hair on her brother's lap as he bounced a pathetic wooden doll in front of her. At the fire, an old woman knelt, stirring something that smelled desperately in need of more ingredients. Beside her, a bearded man, her son perhaps, leaned forward or leaned back against a soft pile of cloth and furs. Seating before him, leaning back into his arms, was a thin woman who watched their children with loving eyes. Their clothes and furniture did nothing to dispel the impression the Master had gotten from outside. Homespun cloth, cut into basic shapes that would do little to protect them from the cold, covered their bodies. What furniture there was badly cobbled together from forage scavenging. By the man, an old axe head had been roughly fixed to a branch that had been used to replace its original handle. The Master's sudden entrance ripped them from their quiet contentment. All eyes turned to him with surprise, then, a moment later, fear. "What do you think you're doing?" The man quickly clambered up. His wife reached forward and drew their children to her. "Before you reach for that axe, I suggest you decide whether it will offer you any protection at all," the Master said calmly. The man looked at him. He squinted, considering. Then suddenly his eyes changed. There was still fear, magnified now, but now there was more. The man's eyes showed a dreadful recognition. He sat back down and wrapped his arms around the bundle of his family. "Please, we don't have anything," he said, looking up at the Master with wide eyes. "You have information," the Master replied, well used to the fear that he saw in front of him. "Tell me that and I'll be satisfied." The man nodded and pulled his family tighter to him. The little girl began to cry, pushing her head into her mother's breast. "This is Britain, yes?" the Master said. The man frowned. "It is, sir. And Arthur rules. Arthur is the king." The man sounded unsure. The Master raised an eyebrow. "You don't know?" "His nephew is trying to take the throne," the man explained. The Master laughed. Perfect. The end of the legends. Could there be a darker time to see this world? This would be an ideal womb. And where is that throne? Camelot? Yes, yes. The master frowned. Where is Camelot? The man understood. To the west, sir. 20 leagues or more. Thank you. The master smiled. Will you go then? The old woman said quietly from by the fire. Soon, old mother. The master glanced at her, the smile never leaving his face. There's one more thing I'm afraid I will need. He looked down at the little girl. Her head was still buried in her mother's chest, and her little body was shaking with terrified sobs. The master concentrated on her and sucked. The sensation was not unlike breathing, except it was more like taking a breath with one's soul. As the master pushed out his aura, the little girl